This is day 4 of our board and train with Ruby. It's not really day 4, but we're gonna go in order because we did the conditioning for a little while that we did in the first video. We also started on place and we did a little bit of healing, which I'll do a separate video on. But this video is going to be about the next step. So once you've conditioned the collar, how are you actually going to integrate that into your training with the dog? So Ruby's been conditioned to the collar. We started on a 7. If you remember, go back and watch that video. There's a whole playlist if you haven't watched it yet, because it will explain everything that kind of comes before this, right? So what I'm going to show you today is how to continue on with the collar and introduce, we're going to work on distance here because that's what Ruby seems to be struggling with, is distance. Here she is right here. And we are still using a leash. Even if I was in a fenced area, I would still be using a leash. And I want you to note that I've had a leash on this dog for every step of this process. Even when we're inside the house, even when we're inside one of the fenced yards, it's important that the leash be kind of backup guidance for the e-collar until the dog has a really firm understanding of what the expectations are here, okay? So what we did is we started at a 7 on the e-collar. That was our working level. Now we're up to about a 10. And I got up to a 10 just because you'll notice that once the dog gets kind of used to that working level, it's not quite as effective as it once was. They get used to it, and if you've ever felt a TENS machine, it can feel good on a lower level. It doesn't necessarily feel uncomfortable, but it can slowly get a little bit more uncomfortable the more intense the collar is. So, but a 10 is still not high. A 10 out of 100 is not high at all. 10 is below what I could feel, what most people could feel on this e-collar on their hand. So it's still low. It's just, you need to find that number that is enough of a deterrent for that dog to hold their position or whatever you're trying to do. So when we were conditioning, I was asking Ruby to sit, and at the same time I was tapping the collar, and then as soon as she sat down I would stop tapping. We're not going to do that because we've passed the conditioning phase, so now we're just on to the training phase. So I'm going to ask her to sit. If she sits, I'm not going to do anything with the collar. If I have to ask her again to sit, I'm going to go back to the tap. So we're giving her a chance to completely avoid the collar if she wants to. So if I have to ask her to sit a second time, I'm going to use the collar, tap until she sits. And if I had to ask a third time, this is where the leash is going to come in. If she's still confused about the tapping or she's too distracted by something, I'm going to use that leash to help me put her back into that sit, okay? And I'll show you here in a minute how that works. I'm also going to use the collar if she gets out of that sit before I give the release command. So the release command is really the most important thing you're going to teach your dog. That's how you're maintaining all of these commands. The dog will sit, the dog will place, the dog will heel, the dog will come when you call them, but where's the end point, right? So if a dog will sit and then they get right back up, they're still sitting, right? You need to have that implied stay with an end point to really make these commands work for you, right? So that's what Ruby's been trained to do. We've also trained her to give eye contact as a prerequisite before the release command. So she knows that she has to look at me before I'm going to release her from the command. And that's just a way of getting your dog's organic attention, right? If the dog is paying attention to you, then they're too busy to see kind of what's going on. Do you know what I mean? Even if the dog is like checking in with you, they might be watching the squirrel, but they're checking in with you, waiting for that next command or that release command. That's exactly what you want. Dogs can't think about two things at once. So if they're looking at you, they're thinking about you and they're anticipating what you're going to say next. If they're looking at the squirrel or the food on the ground, last time we were dropping the food, and we're going to do that again today, asking the dog to sit, dropping the food on the ground, waiting for them to look back at us, and then releasing them, right? That's a good way to do it so that they understand, because when they look at the food in their brain, it's food. And then it's really easy for them to, you know, break command because their brains just aren't as complex as ours, right? It's kind of one track thing. But if you can get them to watch you and pay attention to you, then they're never gonna, that's not gonna happen. Do you know what I mean? Because they're too focused on you. So I have Ruby here. Ruby! I have Ruby here on a long line, and I'm gonna practice doing some sits. And then I'm gonna walk to the end of the leash and then release her if she does good. The other thing I'm only gonna do is I'm only gonna feed her is if I don't have to use the collar at all. So we're kind of waning off the food at this point. I'm not gonna feed her every time. I'm gonna mix it up, but I'm gonna try to only use the food if the expectations are exactly where they need to be, or we're working towards something, some place where we need to be, right? So if she's really struggling with me coming to the end of the leash while she's sitting, I think this leash is 20 feet, so 20 feet away, I might break her or walk back and feed her just to encourage her to stay longer, right? I kind of like to keep in my brain the rule of threes. So if I try something 3 times and the dog is unsuccessful, then I'm gonna take it back a few steps and try that 3 times. And if the dog's successful all those 3 times, then you can increase the difficulty, okay? You also have to do a lot of taking a break from the training and coming back to it either later that day or later the next day, because that's really how dogs learn and generalize things, is taking a break and then coming back to it, right? So we'll get started now. I'm just going to do the training. I'm not going to talk because I think I'm going to be too far away for you to actually hear me. So I'll do a little bit of training, and then if something crazy happens or something really poignant that I want you to know, I might pause and then come back to the camera, okay? So again, we're just going to work on sit and release command. I do have my e-collar on a 10. Ruby has it on. Ruby, sit. Sit. You can remind them or repeat the command when they're doing it, because I'm about to take a few steps back and I want her to make sure that she understands that she needs to stay there. Sit. Break. Good girl. Yes. Good. So that was perfect. So I gave her a piece of food. Good girl. So you notice that she is just completely focused on me, and this is exactly what you want. And this is just those few days of me just doing the collar conditioning and really working on that eye contact. The dogs will pick it up so fast, and it really will make a huge difference. Sit. This time I'm gonna walk away, and I'm gonna come back and feed and then walk away again, okay? This way you're rewarding them for staying instead of rewarding them for being released from the command. If you only reward them when you're releasing them, then they'll always want to prompt for that release, right? Sit. Sit. Good. Sit. 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 I was going to feed her, but she keeps getting up when I approach. So this time I'm just going to do a half back. Good. 3 times I tap the collar. Break. Yes, good girl. Good girl, Ruby. Ruby, sit. Sit. Break. Girl. Ruby. Sit. Sit. Good. Sit. Good. Sit. Good. Sit. Good. Sit. Good. Break. Yes, good girl. Good girl, Ruby. Good girl. Ruby, sit. Girl, sit. Break. Yes. Good girl. Good girl. Good girl. Good girl. Ruby, sit. Good. Sit. Sit. Good. Break. Yes. Good girl. Good girl. So this is the time to really be patient and really try to think of every kind of scenario that you can think of that might kind of trip your dog up and go for those. So yesterday when we were working on walking away, she was really struggling. She did better today, but we're still going to work on it until she understands 100%, right? And really pay attention to your body position. So you saw me kind of backing this way, and then as she got better, I would turn this way. You really have to practice walking away from your dog with your back turned. And also when you get to the end and you turn around, don't always release them then. Do a turn or do a body movement like you're gonna release them, and then don't, right? No, you didn't say break, so put them back into the sit, right? I'll also use different words sometimes instead of break. Spaghetti, doorknob, do you know what I mean? But do the same motion that you do when you say break, because a lot of us have these same motions that we do, and the dogs will pick up on that first. So you really want to work on that word. And actually I'll do a little bit now just to show you what I mean by that, because I think Ruby will be good with that. Ruby! Ruby, sit. Spaghetti! Dancer! Yeah! Good! Sit! Yes, good girl. Good girl. Yes, a good girl. That's a hard one, honey. That's a hard one. So that is hard for them because they will pick up on your body movements first. So make sure that you're really kind of mixing it up and not kind of giving the same body motions every single time that you do it, right? That they're really listening for that word instead of watching kind of your body language, because that'll change. And you don't want the dog breaking because of your body language. You really want it to be on that crispy word, okay? So we'll do it one more time. Hey, sit. Good. Spaghetti. Leaves. Cars. Sit. Sit. Good. Mail. Break. Yes, good girl. Good girl. So just some ideas for kind of intermediate level stuff, working towards more advanced stuff. And my next video will be a healing video, and it's going to be a really good healing video with the e-collar that we'll do next time. Oh my god. Oh my god. But thanks for watching. Please subscribe, like, please watch all the videos in this series because they really are meant to go in order. I know it's long, but it's a lot of information. And thanks for watching.